Carson Hocevar just made the clearest statement yet before COTA. And if anyone thought the Atlanta chaos was about to scare him into changing, it absolutely didn't. The big story right now is not just that Hocevar is still one of the most talked about drivers in NASCAR. After Atlanta, it's that he has now shut down the Hendrick rumors, embraced the Hurricane label, responded to the Dale Earnhardt comparisons, and basically told the entire garage he is not about to become a different driver because people are mad. That is why this one matters so much heading into the DuraMAX Texas Grand Prix at COTA. We're going to break down what caused all this noise after Atlanta, what Hocevar said when he reacted to Richard Petty comparing him to Dale Earnhardt, the warning he sent to drivers talking about payback, how he really feels about the Hurricane nickname catching fire, and then the biggest part of all, the shocking contract news that effectively ends a major speculation for now. And honestly, I think this may be the most revealing Hocevar interview stretch we've gotten yet, because he didn't just answer the criticism, he leaned right into who he is. To understand why all of this hit so hard this week, you have to go back to Atlanta. Hocevar's actual race was classic Carson Hocevar, fast, messy, dramatic, and impossible to ignore. He went 2 laps down early, fought all the way back to the front, got himself into the middle of every late race moment that mattered, contributed to the Christopher Bell overtime wreck, and still finished 4th. That combination is exactly why the garage stays split on him. One side sees a guy who keeps putting himself in winning positions. The other side sees a driver who keeps forcing situations that blow up other people's races. And heading into COTA, he is still 4th in the points, and still one of the hottest names in the sport, even without that first Cup win yet. So, when Hocevar spoke this week, everybody was listening, because there were basically 4 big questions hanging over him. Is he bothered by older legends comparing him to Dale Earnhardt? Does he care that veterans keep hinting payback is coming? Is he actually embracing the Hurricane nickname now that Fox is using it too? And most importantly, is he staying with Spire, or is this just a stop on the way to somewhere bigger, like Hendrick Motorsports? He answered all 4, and taken together, the answers tell you exactly where his head is before the series heads to Austin. First, the Richard Petty comparison, because that is not a small compliment. Petty said Hocevar reminds him of Dale Earnhardt. Not because he is literally the next 7-time champion, but because of how he races on the edge and how he is learning what he can get away with. Petty's words were direct. He said Hocevar is doing things that are not really that wrong, and that Earnhardt learned how to get by with that same kind of style. That is one of the biggest names in the history of the sport, comparing Hocevar's racing instincts to one of the most intimidating and effective aggressive drivers NASCAR has ever seen. And Hocevar's reaction to that was not fake humble. He did not run from it and say, "I don't want those comparisons." He admitted it was cool, and honestly, you could tell he enjoyed it. He said on the podcast that it meant a lot coming from Petty. He talked about how much he loves old races from the 2000s, the 1990s, even the 1980s, and joked that he might not be everybody's favorite driver, but he might be their favorite driver's favorite driver. That is a very Hocevar kind of answer. A little funny, a little cocky, and completely aware of the role he's starting to play in the sport. But the most important part of that answer was not the joke, it was what came right after it. Because Hocevar basically made it clear he is not out there trying to imitate anybody. He said he is not out there trying to imitate anybody. He said he is not behind the wheel asking himself which famous race car driver he wants to play pretend as that day. He said, "I'm just out there racing," and then he doubled down with a line that tells you all you need to know. "I am going to be super aggressive." That's the real message. The Petty comparison may be flattering, but Hocevar is not changing his approach to either prove or disprove it. He's saying flat out that the aggression is not some character he's putting on. It is simply how he races. And that leads directly into the second big issue, the people warning him that retaliation is coming. After Atlanta, we heard some version of that from multiple corners of the NASCAR world. Veterans have been saying for days that if Hocevar keeps putting other drivers in bad positions, eventually somebody is going to decide to settle it the hard way. Hocevar clearly hears that talk, and this week he gave a response that was pretty shocking, because instead of trying to calm it down, he more or less said fine, but understand the math if you do it on purpose. His exact point was actually pretty sharp. Hocevar said that when he gets into somebody unintentionally, from his perspective, that is one thing. But if someone chooses to settle the score on purpose, then to him that is not making things even, that is escalating it. He said intentional payback would be 2 points on the scorecard versus his 1, which means in his mind, deliberate retaliation is worse than the type of aggressive mistake he believes he is making in the heat of the race. And let's be honest, that is one of the most revealing things he said all week, because it shows how he internally justifies the difference between being too aggressive and being intentionally dirty. He's not saying, "I did nothing wrong." He's saying, What I do is racing. What you do back on purpose is something else. That does not mean everybody in the garage will agree with his scorecard. In fact, a lot of drivers probably hear that and think it proves exactly why they get so frustrated with him. But it does tell you he has a framework for it. In his head, he is not out there plotting wrecks. He's out there making split-second high-risk decisions. And if those decisions go wrong, he still sees a difference between that and someone lining him up later with intent. Whether fans agree or not, that is the lens he is using, and it helps explain why he sounds so calm whenever the payback topic comes up. Then there is the Hurricane nickname, which has really started to take on a life of its own. Hocevar knows that, and he sounds more amused by it than anything else. He said he honestly was not sure how much the nickname would keep getting used once the NBC season ended. In his words, he thought, "You're not going to hear that thing till next year in the fall, and maybe somebody would come up with something else." But when Fox used it too, that was the moment he realized the nickname had officially stuck. His reaction was actually pretty funny. He basically said, "Okay, I guess we can make a shirt or something." That is not a guy rolling his eyes at the nickname. That is a guy realizing the branding just became real. More than that, he said he takes it as a compliment. He pointed out that you cannot nickname yourself. It has to come naturally from somebody else, and he sees it as a positive that broadcasters think he is running well enough and is interesting enough that he is worth naming. He even said it is a good sign for the sport if they think he is adding something to the show. That is a very revealing answer, because it tells you Hocevar is not embarrassed by being the chaos magnet. He understands that being talked about, being branded, and being part of the conversation can be good for his career